The fact was that in everything I did, I was very much driven by underlying trauma. My way of coping with my past was performance.
As children, we're gonna choose attachment over authenticity. If our attachment is at risk, we are willing to abandon ourselves.
I think a lot of people, when they look at my body, they don't understand that I had to build an armor. It was not about looks, it was about protection. It was about building something that people wouldn't mess with.
In a world that is so chaotic, filled with so much uncertainty and chaos, the only place that a child can go to for a sense of control is to take all of what is going on externally that is uncertain and out of their control and make it about them.
Yes.
And say, this is me.
Yes.
It's my fault. And I carried so much guilt and shame for living.
When I look at my children sleeping, they're angels. The last thing in this world for me would be to hit them. I really... I will protect them with my life. So understanding how out of balance and how much pain you must be in as a parent to act in that way is horrible, because you must have been in so much pain.
I didn't think that I'm allowed to live. And I almost needed to justify my existence and justify being here in this world.
We live basically on the operating system invented by a child. I see my work I do with men as...
Welcome to the Heart of Man podcast, a podcast dedicated to any man ready to reclaim who he truly is at his core and live fully in self-leadership, love, and purpose. I'm your host, Alex Lehman, and this is for the men ready to move from who they've had to be and fully embody who they truly are. Let's dive in.
Rasmus, my friend, such a pleasure to have you here. Such a pleasure to welcome you here in Bali in this recording studio where I have so many of my conversations, and as well to have you as a guest here on Heart of Man. I welcome you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed the conversations we've had since we met 3 years ago in what was for me a life-altering retreat.
Yes.
And to share this with you and to share today with you is an honor. Thank you.
Yeah. No, the honor is also mine. So to perhaps give our listeners a bit of a context of the relationship with Rasmus and I, as you've already alluded to, we met at a retreat almost 3 years ago.
Correct.
At a Tantra retreat. As I understand, it was a very definitive time for you, and that experience came at a very important time where you were also moving through your divorce. I don't know if you were divorced at the time already, but you were moving through the experience, let's just say, and that was very evident. I was an assistant at the time, and simultaneously, there's something about you that I felt very drawn towards. Obviously, you're almost 20 years my senior, and I saw in you a man who's really lived a life and who's really seen the heights of success, but also experienced, incredible lows and failures and pains and struggles and, moving through divorce, being a father, having built incredible success in business. And there was something about that I looked towards, and there was something in me that was like, okay, like there's something here for me to learn and to discover, and it's been such a pleasure to remain connected with you 3 years later. As it relates to our conversation here today, as I've already alluded to, some guests, we come on this podcast because they have a particular framework, they have particular teachings that obviously might be valuable to the listeners. And some individuals just have incredible life stories, who've literally lived a life. And that's what I see in you.
Yeah.
And, it's been inspiring to see, like I said, your journey over the last number of years, and now as well feeling moved and are already coaching a number of men on their journeys, right? And it's been incredibly admirable. And where I'd really love to focus on and explore is your journey, because I trust that so many listeners will listen in and they will hear about your successes. They will hear about your failures. They will hear about your motivations, what guided you towards building all the success, and also the challenges that came with that. And, being a father, and how you could as well move past perhaps the conditioning that you've received. So yeah, there's so much for us to get into. I'm excited to start rolling.
Yeah.
So maybe as a starting off question here, perhaps in a minute or two, I would love for you to paint a picture of your career to the listeners, just to give a bit of an understanding of your background and as well the businesses you've built. And from there, I want you to answer the question, if you look at that man who was building these businesses, who was working and training at an elite level, who was achieving pretty much every external metric that a man might aspire and dream for, what do you now see in that man that others might have not seen on the outside?
That's a great question, because the fact was that in everything I did, I was very much driven by underlying trauma. And you can basically handle trauma in two ways, either a healthy way and socially acceptable way, or a socially unacceptable way. Socially unacceptable ways would be like sex addiction, so you cheat on your partners, or it could be drugs, alcohol, or uncontrollable anger, or whatever it was. My way of coping with my past, I'm sure we'll dive into that a little bit later, was performance. So, and it basically started by building a physical foundation, because my past includes abuse, both sexually and physically, like violence. And I eventually came up understanding nobody's going to save me. I've got to save me. So at like 13, 14, I started doing sit-ups before going to bed, push-ups. I snuck out in the living room. We had a staircase so I could do pull-ups, and I started doing karate because I realized I have to defend myself. I actually even remember my I at the time I lived with my father, and his wife then discovered that I had a knife lying by the side of my bed. That's the level of fear that was living inside me. So for me, I think a lot of people, when they look at my physical, my body, they don't understand that I had to build an armor. It was not about looks. It was about protection. It was about building something that people wouldn't mess with. And then eventually I found out I'm actually pretty good at this karate thing that I started, and I made it later to the national team. I became 7 times national champion. Other international tournaments I won as well. And that whole journey, like all of a sudden you were in the newspaper all the time, and you became a somebody, you became a name. At the same time, I was also modeling. I remember going to business school, and the first day they distributed calendars to all the students, and one of the first pages was me in underwear, because I was an underwear model. It was kind of like, okay. But because of my past, I've never really felt good about myself. I was a model, but I was too shy to ask a girl out for a date because I was so afraid of rejection, because I never felt that I was good enough. So it doesn't really, all the exterior doesn't matter. What I want to say as well was that my whole journey in karate then led me to travel the whole world with the national team. And I saw all of these gyms, and I saw these are different than the ones in my country. They were far more developed. The Danish fitness industry comes from the bodybuilding industry. So it's a lot of weights and then a little bit of aerobics for the girls, but no cardio, no childcare, no lounge areas. So when I went to the US and saw like more family-styled fitness clubs, like big ones, I was at the time studying to become a market economist. And I wrote my final paper on creating a health club group based on that, what I call the mall theory, like the bigger ones, that it was more inclusive, more generations, and, for people that were also overweight, not only like the elite. And I was supposed to build a gym with 2 close friends, but, at the time, we're talking late 90s, the fitness industry was considered by many like a hobby industry, not like a real industry. And one of the guys whose parents actually had the money, because I don't come from money at all, they said, no, we want you to study law. So that basically punctured that dream. And what then happened was another guy in my karate club actually said, well, I need a guy to come sell memberships in my club because I own a club. And he gave me an opportunity. So I started as a membership sales representative. And like maybe, I don't think it was like a month and a half in, I found out that the club manager had a little bit of a funny way of doing accounting. One for the till, one for his pocket. and since I had a loyalty to the owner, because I knew him from karate, I obviously let him in on that little secret. And he said, okay, do you want to run the club? So, well, I had a marketing background. And basically, my idea was to grow in more in that direction. But yeah, okay, I'd be happy to do that. But I also let him in on my idea of creating this American style, this bigger, more inclusive style of clubs. And we ended up becoming business partners. And we took in a third partner, a woman, and built what became the largest health club group in Denmark. I started as the marketing director, and like 4 years in, I became the managing director. So like at age 30, I had a staff of 2,200 people and 125,000 members, 38 clubs. We had like, yeah, it was a big, it was a real business.
Yeah.
And I remember, but still it was funny because I was wearing a suit to work. And, when you're the CEO overseeing such a big business, you go to meetings with the banks, the lawyers, everything, the landlords, because you're expanding. And when I talk to people about, so what do you do? Yeah, I'm the director, like I'm the CEO. Oh, you mean an instructor? Like why would a fitness business need a CEO? It's just some people come in and they need a workout program. But, at the end of the day, it's all the same discipline. It's financial, it's H&R, and it's like expansion. It's everything, no? So I was definitely in the right place. I've always been super passionate about exercise, but more so, I've always been passionate about helping other people live better lives. And that is the thin red line in everything I've ever done. And it's also so from a work perspective, what I promised myself is the day that I die, I want to have helped the maximum number of people have lived healthier, happier lives. That started with physical exercise and creating health club groups. First, this one, we sold it off to a listed company. And later on, I built a second one and a third one. And then I started going into digital fitness as well. And so it's been quite the journey. And then from physical fitness, I added nutrition. From nutrition, I now transitioned into more deep work, both like mentally, emotionally, sexually, financially, because there are more parts to a man's life, of course, than just physical health, which I realized. So yeah, it's been quite the journey. And as you say, for me, it was all about probably very classical male in the regards to living from an illusion that, based on my background, I had this gigantic void, this feeling of emptiness inside. And I felt assured that I just need 1 million euro more or 2 million more. I just need to I chased everything. I want to be the national champion. I became the national champion. Oh, I probably need to be the national champion again. 7 times later, it just felt more, it actually felt less and less. The first time was the best. and it felt less and less. So it couldn't fill. So, okay, and then I need to build a health club. I need to build one more. Oh, there's an award that's called a European Club Operator of the Year. That must be something that's worthwhile chasing. So I chased that.
If I may just piggyback on that for a moment.
Yes.
What is it that now you can see you were actually chasing? I mean, obviously it is perhaps the euro sign, but what was actually fundamentally there that was underneath it? But also, second thing, how did that impact you as it relates to your life or your relationships? So what was the cost as well that came to that way of operating?
So for me, it's very obvious that what I was trying to achieve was acknowledgement, a feeling of being good enough. That emptiness came from a feeling of not being good enough, from very, very low self-worth, from the experiences that I had as a child. So I thought, if I just achieve enough, I will convince the whole world, including myself, that I'm good enough. And as said, I built big businesses, I sold them, I made millions, and the feeling of emptiness remained the same. And it also meant that in relationship, I had a similar feeling. I could be with a wonderful person, a woman, and I would still feel alone. I will still feel empty inside. And my conclusion was, I must be with the wrong woman. I never realized that it was about me, not her, because I thought the solution was outside of me. And it took many years and a complete breakdown after my divorce to realize that what I've been looking for my entire life and chasing my entire life had always been with me. It was inside of me, but I had been looking the wrong place. My whole world was like mirrors because I had no sense of self. So I would be looking at you, for instance, and I would try to figure out, how are you seeing me? Even to the extent that I would be kind of like a chameleon.
Yeah.
The chameleon owns all of its own colors, but I would adapt to you because I was highly socially intelligent, because I would know how to make you like me. Because I needed you to like me to feel good enough about me.
Yeah.
So my whole world, but the problem is that when you use the world as a mirror, most of those mirrors are kind of broken, because of their own pasts and the things that they carry. So you will never see a true reflection of yourself in other people. You will see their reflection of you, not who you truly are. So obviously that was painful. And also, man, I could never relax because I always had to be attentive to, who are you? What's your energy? How do I tune into you? How do I make sure that you like me? What can I say? What can't I say? So that was strenuous, but I wasn't really super aware of it until I let it go. And like, wow, what a weight that just came out from my shoulders, just to be me. My whole life, I've been carrying this enormous burden of trying to please everybody. And all of a sudden said, love me or leave me. And it was just, And the fact is that when you act in that way, you attract basically everybody. Because you make everybody like you. And the thing is, when you have a childhood, so my mom was a violent alcoholic. When you grow up in that type of environment, you leave yourself to become fully aware of your surrounding, because your surrounding is dangerous. So you lose connection with yourself, but you get incredibly talented at tuning into other people. And that was the cost I had to pay, or the price I had to pay. And then finally being able to return to me. And to just show this is me. Was the greatest gift ever. Because what it also meant was, I could then attract who was truly for me. But I could at the same time reject who was not for me. Because it became clear to them, who am I? Before I was everybody's friend. And I had a friend once tell me, everybody's friend is nobody's friend.
Let's pause here for a moment. There's so much here already. So I just want to as well ground that in for the listeners. I mean, a common aspect that we discuss and explore as well within the podcast is the persona of the nice guy. And I think there is obviously gradients towards it, because I can see that there was also like a depth of resilience. And I imagine, like, especially as it relates to achievement and business, like there was most likely a deep ability to move past failure, to move past rejection. It's simply required. I mean, you're probably a better testament to those expressions than I am. But I think many men can very much relate to this idea of being a chameleon and needing to be very adaptive, being highly emotionally and socially intelligent and very sensitive. I can, of course, relate to that as well in my own element. And I guess one of the elements as well that I really want to bring in here, Rasmus, is, like self-worth is definitely a big one for a lot of men. But I also consider how safety and belonging is something that might not be are often articulated, but are also fundamental components and fundamental aspects to a man's experience that is often guiding him in these darker motivations. Like I consider, I mean, like you've already kind of alluded on it and touched on it. And if you're open to it in a moment, I would like to hand it over for you just to share a little bit more about like the background that you come from. But, as you already touched on, it's like, physical abuse, mother is an alcoholic, sexual abuse you also referenced. I mean, fuck me, like as a child, that's an incredibly unsafe environment. And as children as well, with the fragility and the vulnerability we carry, we require attachment to survive, right? Like Gabor Mate is one of my deepest inspirations, and he's beautiful. And obviously, like I've said this so many times here, but I feel like I can't say it enough on this podcast. He says, like, as children, we're gonna choose attachment over authenticity, right? If our attachment is at risk, we are willing to abandon ourselves. And that's what I'm hearing in your experience, right? That there was moments where you had to choose attachment. And that was a way for you to stay safe, for you to get accepted, for you to be recognized or acknowledged as someone who's valuable or worthy. And I think that's something that so many men will be able to relate to. But I think where the challenge lies for so many is that they don't understand the motivations that are actually guiding and driving them.
Before we jump back into this episode, I want to take a short moment to speak to any man listening who feels ready to go deeper. The man who longs to feel at peace with himself, who knows he's capable of more, and who can sense that there are parts of himself he hasn't yet been able to fully reach. The man who craves real connection and fulfillment in his romantic partnership, and a more passionate, satisfying, intimate life. Through my work, I've had the honor of supporting men through powerful transformations, both personally and professionally. Here's what some of them had to say about our work.
I was able to fully reconnect with myself, which enabled me to fully reconnect with my partner.
I was just blown away by how skilled he was as a guide, as a coach. He really met me where I was at.
Yeah, thank you, Alex, for this amazing time. You changed my life, and it's so crazy what's possible in such a short time.
Don't think twice. Sign up, take the leap to join him in any of his courses and programs. You will not be disappointed.
I feel more confident, more grounded, and in control of my emotions.
It was just a beautiful and magical experience, and therefore I'm going to work with him in future for sure.
As men, we often overlook our emotional needs, but Alex is someone you can truly rely on to help you work through them. I could not recommend him higher.
As you can hear, I've had the privilege of walking alongside men and couples through deep and lasting transformation in the way they live, lead, and love. And while my work continues to grow and evolve, one-to-one coaching remains my favorite. The intimacy, the commitment, and the depth inside this container are undeniable. At the time of releasing this episode, I have 2 spots open for my one-to-one coaching. If you notice even a slight inclination to take this next step, my encouragement is to follow that and reach out for a free connection call with no strings attached. You'll find a link to a type form in the show notes, or you can send me a DM on Instagram. It'd be an honor to explore how I can support you on your journey.
So let's hand it over again to you. And I want to hear a little bit around the experiences that you went through. And one of the things that when I understood more around your past and your journey, the word that came up for me, or the theme that I perceive you would really had to move through, is powerlessness, ironically. Like I mean, a few things that, and again, like happy for you to expand on those, but I hear that your mother died at 16 and she was looking for an alternative treatment.
Correct.
And she couldn't have that. And it sounds like that initiated a sense of powerlessness in you that drove you towards a lot of the financial achievement that you then eventually gained. Correct. Obviously physical abuse, whether, I don't know if it was in your familial setting or if it was more through the bullying you experienced, and obviously the sexual abuse, right? And powerlessness is a fucking big one, I think, for a lot of men. I think as men, last thing I'll say, and then I hand it over. I think as men, our seat of peace and our seat of happiness is in our sense of power. And I'm not talking about like the sense of power that is often expressed in the world. What I'm more referencing is more our sense of like our seat in ourselves, having an understanding that I have agency and I have the capacity to influence my environment and as well be influenced by my environment. Like that is one way of looking at power in my eyes. It sounds like your power was taken away from you. So let's expand on that. And I want to as well hear from you. How did you then reclaim your sense of power and move into agency again?
Oof, it's a big one, no? And it, as you say, we don't understand these things before we've done our healing, and we can look back at what was actually planted in us at a very, very early age. And when working with men, that's what I see again and again, that the patterns that show up in their adult life that is causing so much pain for them stems from their childhood. The beliefs they created, the coping mechanisms they had to adapt to survive. And it's no different from me. I'm no different in the sense that, I was born into a divorce. There's a little spark of love left, apparently, and that was how I came to this world, because they're actually separated. When they had me, my mom then remarried, and it was her second husband who then came to visit late nights in my bedroom at age 5 or 6. And obviously it was something where he came into a dark room. I was sleeping. So the memories are very vague, but the feelings are very strong. And it took me a lot of work to allow myself for those feelings to resurface. And when I allowed them to resurface, that was powerful. And actually, the first time that I really allowed to reconnect with those emotions was when we were in that retreat.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of people who go into Tantra, for instance, is because they want to reconnect with their sexuality in a healthy way. And that was definitely also a major reason for me to be there, to own my sexuality fully, to understand what was living in me due to the sexual abuse. And you can say my feeling of safety in my home, this guy was obviously not my biological parent, but he should have been a father figure. He should have been a guardian, not an abuser. And my mother then found out, because this didn't only happen to me, but to my sister as well.
No.
And my sister...
Did you tell your mother, or?
I was not aware fully at the time. My memories were, as said, very vague. I remember disliking him, disliking his touch.
Right.
But I basically shut down all the memories that have then later resurfaced when I allowed myself to go into the black box, which I think is very typical for people who suffer from sexual abuse, that it's too big of a thing to handle, and you put it in a big black box. And I think that's obviously unhealthy to have living in you. So, I feel the strongest, the healthiest, the best version that I've ever been because of the work that I've done over the past 5 years, because I know I turned every stone and I've healed every emotion that comes from the sexual abuse, my mother's violence, and the uncertainty, because my mother was a loving, caring, wonderful person as well.
Yeah.
But she was also a violent alcoholic. And for many, many years, I protected her. Always. I would say, oh, my father was not there. And my mother was the one who made me into the person I am. And yeah, for better and worse. But at the time, I think the problem is that we as children take responsibility for the things that happen to us.
Yeah.
So
I want to touch on that in a moment, but
let's go back to that then. But my mother then, my sister told my mother, she wrote her letters and talked about her experiences, and eventually, not initially, but eventually, we left. I remember waking up to a moving truck and just moving to another place. Didn't know why, didn't understand anything. And then my mother started drinking more heavily, and then the violence started. And when we talk about how does that then live in you, well, attachment style. If you have a woman who's your biggest love, because your mother is your first big female love, who is on one side dangerous, and you have to be super aware, and on the other side, like cuddling and, kissing me and hugging me and writing the nicest letters. I just never knew. And that gives you an insecure, like an anxious attachment style, no? I don't know. Can I go in, and do I need to go out? So for me, obviously that has stayed with me also in relationships. I really want it, but I'm also afraid of it. So it's that dual mechanism. And then, as you say, eventually, because of that environment, I remember my mother then worked nights to be able for us to live. We moved into like a concrete kind of ghetto. And to leave that place, she took a work that meant she worked nights. And that so meant that I, at age 10, had to prepare my own dinners, go to bed by myself. And I was alone. I just remember hugging I had this little dog, like a teddy, and I was crying myself to bed, hugging that dog. And I learned cooking very early. And I remember once I tried calling my dad because I knew he was working not so far away. Could you please come have dinner with me? He said, no, he had to go home to his wife. And to this day, he regrets that. We've had a lot of really healthy talks, and I'm thankful for that. Yeah. But he failed me. He let me down for sure. He didn't support me. It was there for me the way that it should have been. And at age 11, I remember, this is after an experience where I said, feeling alone. So I invited a friend home and said, can I cook for you and make dinner? Would you? I'm 11. But he came, and then my mom came home and she saw 2 plates, and I was not allowed to have guests. So what happens? I'm asleep. She comes up, wakes me up, starts beating me in bed. And I resonated about this experience so many times. I said, when I look at my children sleeping, they're angels. The last thing in this world for me would be to hit them. I really, I will protect them with my life. So understanding how out of balance and how much pain you must be in as a parent to act in that way is horrible, because you must have been in so much pain. I did a lot of work healing my relationship with her in my own healing work, and I've forgiven her and I love her. But I had to do a lot of work that was never mine, but was given to me because she didn't do it. And it's been a driving factor in my own healing work. I remember sometimes some of the work that I've been doing when I'm really connected with the most painful stuff is that, like, I can't do this anymore. And then this little voice said, okay, who's going to do it? You or Isabel and Victor? You or the kids?
Wow.
So, okay, I'm doing it. I'm not going to give this to them. This is mine and it's going to stay with me. I want to break the pattern. And I think, many men would say, I would die for you. But what your kids really need is for you to live for them more than anything. And living meaning, deal with your past, heal it, so you can be fully present, because they don't need presence, they need presence. And if your past is living actively in you, it is so difficult to be fully present. So for me, I said, I think that was a divining moment, that being woken up, being beaten in bed, and said, I remember one night staring out in the darkness, having eaten by myself. For some reason, I wasn't wearing a shirt, taking a kitchen knife, holding it to my chest, and said, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm going to end this now. I was 11. And luckily, I don't know why. I know why I wanted to end my life. Because it was a shortcut to end the pain. And the pain was too intense. But there was a voice in me that said, okay, maybe you should call your father. And I called my father and said, can I please come live with you? And he accepted. And I think that meant the world to me. But, so I moved from domestic violence. I was pretty smart in school. I was probably the best student. But I was also restless, which I understand now with everything going on. And then I think my parents agreed and the school agreed it would probably be a good idea for me to skip a grade, so I would be more academically challenged. So I moved to this school, skipped a grade. And what happened then is that I was living in the city and I moved out to a little suburb. So here comes this young kid, and I, to this date, still don't really understand why. If it was because the girls found me interesting, I was still the best in class, even though I skipped a grade. I also know that I felt like $1 million because when I lived with my mother, we had very little. To the extent that when we went to the supermarket, I said, I really like to have this for dinner. I said, no, we can't afford that. So to this date, when I go to the supermarket and I can buy whatever I want for dinner, that's one of the places where I feel the richest. But then I come to and also in regards to clothing, I had to inherit my sisters' and brothers' old clothes. I got a little bit new, but a lot of used as well. And then all of a sudden I come to my father's place. I get new clothes. They make a new, beautiful room for me. And, but then the bullying starts in school. I didn't have pubic hairs. I think that's how it started because I was obviously 1 year later than everybody else. And they told the girls, and then it started with words and then it became physical. So I remember being strung up with a wire by my feet in the wardrobe and then basically hanging upside down and being beaten. And I remember the girls coming and say, hey, stop. And I think even I said, no, we're just playing because I was so ashamed of what was happening. I was so ashamed of being defenseless. And I think for many years, I was also ashamed of not really fighting back, even though there was a lot of them. But I didn't understand that. And I didn't tell my father. And I never understood why until I did all my healing work. Because I learned from a young age that this is your life. People can do with you what they want. Sexual abuse, violence at home. My only job is to try to minimize or avoid, read my mother to see is he in a good mood or bad mood. So what did I do with these bullies? I didn't try to fight back. Obviously, they were more than me and they were bigger than me. And at the time, I didn't know how to fight. But I tried to become friends with them. I tried to use my social intelligence. Anyways, so there's what happened is that I moved to my father. But at age 15, my mom then, and I lived through this violent bullying. I then start karate. I remember and then I also stopped. I graduated from 9th class and I was going to business school. And I remember one of the bullies said, "You looking forward to come back after the summer holidays? Yeah, you can just give it a try." Because then I knew, now I know how to fight. So I was ready. Nothing ever happened again. But then, as soon as that stopped, my mom got sick with cancer at 15, and she died after I had gone the first year in business school. And as you said, there was an experience there that probably marked me in regards to wanting to have a treatment, an alternative treatment for her cancer. She was an alcoholic and she got pancreatic cancer. I think it's related to the alcoholism. And we couldn't afford that. So something that is lived in me means if you don't make enough money, if you don't have money, people will die. So if you look at my driving factors behind why do I have a super fit body, it's because if I don't have muscle, somebody will mess with me. They will abuse me. They will beat me up. So I need to be strong. I needed to be. Now, it's just, let me just go back to that. And if you don't have money, somebody will die. So if you look at when I was facing failure, imagine all the things at play that wouldn't be at play for, say, normal people if they exist. I had to fight. Because if I wasn't a success, I wasn't good enough. If I didn't succeed to make money, somebody will die. Imagine the driving force behind that.
There was no way you could fail with that.
Failure was not
like that's what I see.
Failure was not an option. I can't give that to other people, of course.
Yeah, well.
But I can help them unblock what normally stands in their way of success.
Yeah.
And typically it's a lack of self-love is what I feel.
Can we pause here for a moment?
Absolutely.
First of all, there's so much that you'd said, and it's been a number of moments where I was like super moved and like just touched with tears, especially when you were talking about your kids. And it was like there's so many moments that just completely touched me. And I thank you as well for the depth and the vulnerability that you shared here with. A few things that stood out for me that I might just want to reflect. Something that had also been very prevalent for me, and I've also, been working with this for years, but also something came up recently around the fact that, so I've shared this a few times now as well. So before my mom met my dad, she was married. She had 2 children. They were living in Belarus. My mom is originally from Kazakhstan. And their house was set on fire and all of them died. So her husband died and her 2 children died. And she was the only one that survived. And shortly after that experience, she moved to Germany because, she's of German descent. And that's where she met my dad. And not even 2 years after the experience, the incident, I was conceived. I was brought into the world.
Wow.
And so obviously, like if you know anything about, generational trauma, I can't even fathom what that also must have been like for me, obviously as well, like what that was like for her, right? But I had an experience recently in a family constellation session. And I've done a few of these actually, and where this as well come up, but this time again it just it just hit me like a ton of bricks again. And what I'd come to realize is that experience of coming into the world, of my mom being in shock fundamentally.
Yeah.
She hadn't processed that, right? She had a depth of grief. And me as a child looking obviously to my mother for attachment, but her like essentially being closed and numb, not being able to provide me that in the way that I might have needed it. And then seeing her as well, like in distress, and then as well, like having regular hospital visits and all of those things. I had made it my fault that she lost her children.
Yes.
And I had made it my fault that she lost her husband. And I had made it my fault that she's going through so much grief. Now, obviously, if you think about it as like a mature adult, that is just insanity. Like, how can I make it my fault? But then I'd as well spoken with an attachment therapist around this. And he had shared with me that in a world that is so chaotic, so like filled with so much uncertainty and chaos, the only place that a child can go to for a sense of control, for a sense of like agency, is to take all of that responsibility and to take all of what is going on externally that is uncertain and out of their control and make it about them.
Yes.
And say, this is me.
Yes.
It's my fault. Right. And I carried so much guilt and shame for living. Yeah, it still touches me when I speak about it. Yeah, I didn't think that I'm allowed to live, and I almost needed to justify my existence, and justify being here in this world, because if this didn't happen, I wouldn't even be here, right? And it was a deep experience of, I think the details of what happened are not so necessary, but fundamentally it was kind of like a correction where, I was needed to come into an embodied sense that this was not mine to hold. All right. So I just wanted to name that this is something, can happen. And then obviously these become driving forces in our lives. And, yeah, I find it as well. One point that I want to make, and then as well, I want to direct it over with another question to you. I as well got bullied, and I as well attempted to make friends with my bullies. It's a very weird mechanism, right? Maybe that's also why I relate and connect with you so well. But I also consider the fact that I never spoke about being bullied. My parents never knew about it. My sister eventually found out about it, about my like shares online and all that, but I didn't share with anyone around it. Frankly, I didn't have anyone. But I think what was also present for me is a deep sense of shame.
Yeah.
A deep sense of shame that it almost felt like intuitively knowing that I'm in a male body and I didn't fight back.
Exactly.
It felt like the deepest form of castration and emasculation that I could have done. And my deepest fear has always been to be a coward and to be seen as a coward. And frankly, I had judged that experience and said that guy was a coward. And sometimes that is still something I work with, to be honest with you. A lot better at it. But yeah, there's still... It's interesting how such experiences can guide us and drive us.
It really is. I think, speaking of, I find it odd how I made it into martial arts. Because I was fighting the best fighters in the world. I competed in not only the nationals, the European, the world championships. I was a heavyweight. These were the big guys.
Yeah.
Okay. I was super afraid. And I understand why I was afraid. but I wanted to win so badly. And I really also, I finally found something I was good at. But I remember I had a Norwegian trainer. He said, there's I think it's called The Cuckoo Nest, a movie where there's this huge Indian who has no idea how powerful he is. And he called me the Indian because he said, Rasmus, you are so big and so strong. You have and talented. You have no idea how good and strong you are. My biggest limitation when I competed was my mind. My biggest competitor was me at all times. I want to go back to what you said in regards to taking on responsibility. Because when my mom fell sick and died with cancer, I blamed me. I left her. She died because I left her. And not until the work that started when my marriage started falling apart and started working with a therapist who did something, you're obviously familiar with Gestalt therapy, but not everybody is, where you you speak to an imaginary person sitting in another chair. It can either be another version of you or a person who's no longer here. And I had this session with my mom, and I had to tell her, I did not kill you. Those words could not leave my mouth. And when they finally did, I completely broke down in tears. I had carried so much guilt for my entire life. This was at late 40s, no? Maybe 5 years ago, 47, 48. She died when I was 16. So I carried that for more than 30 years of guilt of her death. That was obviously, it was her lifestyle choices. Not that I moved out, but it alludes to what you said, that when we are children, whatever happens, we make it about us. And it is so difficult to realize how that lives in us and the patterns it creates, the perception of reality it creates, and be able to give it back to who it really belongs to.
Yeah.
And for me, I had an experience. My healing journey took me to Costa Rica at an Ayahuasca retreat. And given my elite sports background, I have zero experience with drugs. So I was really scared, I was angry, and I was a lot of things, and I had to dive into this experience where you really have to surrender. And it's difficult when you really want to have control, because if you don't have control, bad things happen. But it was a beautiful and life-altering experience. 1 day of breathwork, 4 days of ayahuasca, 1 day of breathwork. And in one of my journeys, I had the brew, the tea, and you enter this more psychedelic phase. And when you come out, I started working, like understanding things. And all of a sudden, this person is shouting, "You're stupid. You're ugly. Nobody loves you. Nobody wants you." And I was kind of like, hey, I was just having a pretty good time. Who are you? Why are you shouting at me like this? What's your problem? It was me. It was my self-contempt. It was how I truly felt about myself. And I was able to then ask, so why do you feel like that? When your father was never there for you, your mother beat you, and, they beat you up in school, nobody cares about you. You're worthless. And then I started reasoning with that person, which was, at the end of the day, hard-coded beliefs that had lived in me since childhood.
Yeah.
But I could reason with it. I said, okay, wait a minute. Right now, you're going through the worst period of your life. How do you think that affects your children? And does it have anything to do with them? Not at all. So could it possibly be that what you experienced that made you feel worthless had nothing to do with you? That it actually had to do with your father, your mother, these boys who beat you up. One of the guys, actually, one of the bullies, wrote me not so many years ago, and he said he was incredibly sorry for what happened, and that he was beaten up more or less daily by his father at home, and this was kind of his outlet, and he was super sad and sorry about it. So that was beautiful, but it also just proves that a lot of the really bad things that live in us has nothing to do with us.
No.
And I realized, and I was able to realize and let go of all those negative beliefs. There was never anything wrong with me.
Yeah.
I was a beautiful, wonderful person, a child who deserved to be loved, who deserved to be taken care of, who deserved to feel safe and be hugged. I didn't deserve all the shit that happened to me. And it was never about me. So I could give that back and finally let it go. And that was, as said, life altering. And it took a lot of work to get there. But I think that's basically where we get screwed up the most.
Yeah.
It amazes me how fragile we are as children. Those few years, how determining they are for our entire lives. We live basically on the operating system invented by a child. And we never do. So I see my work I do with men as an adult revision of that system.
Yeah.
Go back, revisit. Not to dwell on the past, but to revisit, make a revision and say, because you can never change the past, but you can definitely change how the past lives in you, how you perceive it. You can remodel, reprogram what that actually means, because the meaning we gave it is rarely the true meaning. It probably never is. So to be able to do that work as an adult is a gift. And not only a gift to you, but to everybody you care for. Because it lived in my parenting, my relating. I think the thing I've done best in my entire life, I don't think I've been a bad father. I think I've been a loving, caring, attentive father, because I was so attentive to all the bad things that happened to me. I don't want to be absent. I want to be with my children. I want to create a safe environment. I want to have time with them. I stopped, I built businesses, build, to have a financial foundation. I wanted fuck you money. And just to give you an idea of that term, it means that you're not dependent on anyone. So nobody can say, you have to come to work Monday morning. Fuck you. I don't need you to tell me what to do, because I have what I need to live the life that I want. And for me, it was super important to be able to prioritize my kids as number one. So when I had kids, I stopped working as a CEO and transitioned into chairman. It was a way for me to actively still work with the money that I had, put my experience and my network to work, and basically feel that I was still doing something that I love doing, because I'm super passionate about the fitness industry. There's so many wonderful people in that industry who really truly wants to help. You want to help that. That's why also I think when you say, why do we connect? Well, we do share some traumatic thing from our past, but we also have a burning desire to make the lives of men better, to help them.
Let's jump in here, man, because I think this is now, given as well the depth that we've now explored, and as well the background, and I think a lot of men will be able to resonate and connect with it in their own ways, of course. And I want to hear how you as well move past these experiences, and as well past kind of the old operating system that you had adopted. And one of the things, as I understand your journey, is it started with the break of your marriage, and then eventually stepping into divorce. And this, I perceive, is a really big catalytic moment for a lot of men that are, I would argue, driven into this work. It's usually at the brink or at the factual moment of divorce or breakup. This is what I see with so many men. And talk to me about the moment where you realized I actually now need to look deeper. And what did you require to do to step past this old operating system?
Yeah.
Third part, and I'll remember these. So if you don't forget, if you forget, it's fine. There's an interest for me to know, how did you, because I'm so touched by your story about the type of father that you are and your commitment as a father. How did you ensure that you don't pass on that same modeling that you'd received from your parents? So starting off, where was the moment where you realized this is no longer fucking working? What did you do to step past it?
So I believe it was in the spring of 2021. I was sitting on my bed in my villa in Spain, dream villa. I had my entire life dreamt about living with ocean view. And, you know, I said, growing up in a concrete ghetto, driving up to this like mansion on the top of a hill, overseeing the ocean and the mountains, and you know, click a remote, and for me it was a remote to paradise. You know, sliding door goes, and I said, if anybody had talked to this 10-year-old, 8-year-old in that concrete jungle, said, when you're 40-something, this is where you're gonna live. Like, never, ever. But that eventually happened, and I was sitting there overlooking the ocean, and tears just started streaming down my face. I was so sad. I was so miserable. Because remember, I made a transition when I became a father. The beautiful thing about working the way that I did is you feel nothing. You dream work. And when you don't dream, you work. You just push. So if you have traumatic pasts, you know, workaholism is I didn't do drugs, I just worked. And exercised. And then when I decide, okay, I need to work less because I need to be I want to be a present father. What happens? Well, everything you've been trying to outrun all of a sudden catches up. And that's basically what happened. And it didn't have a name. It was not clear what it was. It was just emotionally overwhelming that I am so deeply sad. So I called. So what had happened was, I'd been in a relationship prior to my marriage with a girl, a woman, and she had a daughter as well. And I cheated in that relationship.
In your marriage or the relationship?
Never in my marriage, and I'll come back to why. But in the previous relationship. And I understand today why. Because of the feeling, it can never be justified. I was an adult, I'm responsible. But I also had to understand the mechanism. And basically, I was in a relationship feeling empty. I couldn't figure out how to leave that relationship. I was attached to her, and I was also very attached to her daughter. But I felt so empty inside. So I thought, well, maybe if I try this girl, it was never about, you know, like sex, or that wasn't the issue. The issue was, how can I make this emptiness go away? Because it was so painful. And I think you have moral standards until the pain gets significant enough, then everything goes out the window. Eventually, obviously, we end the relationship. I cheated, and then I think she found out later. But as a consequence, I've said, I cannot stay in this relationship because of what I've done. Left the relationship, started psychotherapy for the first time because it fucked me up that I had cheated.
Right.
And today I know why, because it's called cognitive dissonance. You're probably very familiar with that.
Of course.
I had an identity. I'm a nice guy. And then there's this woman crying, in pain, loving me, and I do probably one of the worst possible things. I break her trust, I break her heart, I betray her. That was me. So obviously I could not continue a belief, an identity is that I'm a really nice guy. I was a fucking scumbag. I was the ugliest person alive, which resonated really well with my self-content and all the things I was carrying in. So it was powerful.
I hear in that was an opportunity for you to reclaim your shadow as well, right? Because there was shadow motivations that were here, and that as an incident demanded of you to actually look at that, right? Because your view was, I am a nice guy, and that's perhaps the front way of that was the way people look at you. But what's the back end, right? And I think a lot of people don't see the back end. I think that's also what is there for so many men. So I'm curious, like, what did you discover through psychotherapy? What did you discover then through, from my understanding, psychedelics was a part of your journey? And assisted therapy as well.
It was a long road into what I was about to tell you. It's basically because how did this all start? What happened was, I believe that we operate in 3 different levels.
Yeah.
We are either surviving, or we are suffering, or we are living fully. Those are the 3 layers. I believe, unfortunately, that most of us operate in survival mode. Means that there are painful things in our lives, but we found out ways to handle them with various coping strategies. That was me. So what happened when I realized I'm a fucking asshole? This behavior is unforgivable, and it speaks heaps to who you are. I dropped down
to
suffering. And it was so painful. I said, I can't exist here. What do I do? So I started therapy for the first time. And this I've seen with men as well. What happened? I did 10 sessions. What happened? I went from suffering back to survival. I said, oh, thank you. The chain is back on. I can continue to go. And I left.
Oh, man.
And I left him for 10 years.
Fuck.
But what I learned was that, okay, if you cheat, you really mess up another person, but more than anything, you really also mess up yourself. And just to be very, very clear, there is no excuse to be an asshole. That is a firm belief of mine. You can tell me your story as much as you want. You're a responsible person as an adult.
Sure.
There is no excuse to be an asshole. You have to own that yourself. So I own that. I'm not trying to come up with excuses. It's unforgivable. You can explain, but not excuse. That's 2 different. That's very different. You can explain as much as you want, but it does not excuse the behavior.
You have to take
So I am not excusing my behavior, just to be very clear.
Yeah. Oh, I feel that.
So what happened then was, I'm sitting on the bed, overlooking the oceans, tears streaming down.
This was after the psychotherapy.
So this is 10 years later. 10 years later, because
okay.
Yeah, sorry, fast.
Right.
Because what happened is, drop down in suffering, go up in survival,
keep going.
Met my then to be wife, became a parent, and everything was okay for 10 years in survival mode. Just continue, no? And then, I slow down, everything, all the bad stuff catches up, and all the pain comes to the surface. And I call this guy up, again, this psychotherapist, and say, you helped me out 10 years ago. I need help, and I think I need a lot more than 10 sessions this time, because this time I want to go all the way. So, okay. So we start working, and then soon enough, at that time, our relationship was already struggling. And it very shortly after, it really gets super challenging for us. And I then talk to my therapist and say, you know, I think we need help as a couple. And I said, when I fight, I fight. So if something is, we're not talking, it's okay, let's do couples counseling once every second week. I flew down 2 therapists again and again, installed them on a hotel, took the kids to school, pick up the therapist, went back to the house, worked with them the whole day, took them back, and while I pick up the kids, and then whoever were picking up, the other person got individual therapy and ended up doing 200 hours of therapy.
Wow.
So, but for me, you know, so again, coming back to being a parent, when I look my kids in the eye today, I can honestly say I did everything. We did everything to try to save this. And yeah, but as the Indians say, if the horse is dead, get off. And I think when you've been trying to kick it for 200 hours and it's still not moving, it's probably dead. And that, I think, ended up being the painful conclusion, and led us to go separate ways, which was, with all the pain that a divorce entails. But this was, as said, it didn't happen. We're talking, this is 21. The divorce is first not final until 23. And I believe it was later in 21. Our marriage was in so much trouble, and I was in so much trouble because of it. And I met with this guy, a friend of mine, in a cafe, and said, I'm going to Costa Rica. Why are you going to Costa Rica? Oh, this is a retreat. What retreat? Ayahuasca. What's ayahuasca? I never heard about it. It's like probably difficult to explain exactly what it is, but, you know, imagine whatever you can and good stuff, and then multiply by 10. I'm coming. I didn't know. And it alludes to, just coming back to your point, and which I've also understand fully now in regards to coaching of men. No man starts working in survival mode. They start working when they're suffering. When something shakes them to their foundation, brings them to their knees, when the pain is so grave that they understand, I can't do this, I need help. And that's when they come knocking on your door or my door and said, please, I'm ready. Hopefully, we can keep them long enough to not only help them back into survival, but actually help them to go all the way into living. I see men trying to, thank you, we're done. No, we're not done. Please.
Let's touch on that in a moment, brother. Yeah, dude, first of all, this podcast has been flying, and it's been wild, and it's been fucking epic, and like I've just been having such a good time with you, and so great as well to hear so much about your journey and who you are, and as well the depth that you have gone in. And I just admire as well, like when I hear about what you had gone through to save your marriage, and like your dedication in terms of doing this work is admirable.
I probably have to add a few more things.
Okay. Yeah.
Because,
well, let's keep it brief, because I have a final question for you.
I'll keep it super brief.
Yes.
But as said, when I go in, I go all in.
Yes.
And I want to make sure that I do everything I can. So that I did not only go to Costa Rica to do ayahuasca.
Yeah.
I started doing yoga, breathwork, meditation, Tantra. I did and obviously the psychotherapy. I just want to say that I did everything I possibly could. And through those different practices, I was able to unlock different issues that I was struggling with.
I think we're very similar in that way. I mean, I have a very extreme personality, and when I recognize, it's so interesting. Like with me, it's like I've had deep suffering in my life, but surviving is no longer satisfactory in any way at all.
No.
It's like I don't stay surviving at all. Like I want to go into fucking living and thriving, you know?
Yeah.
So I continue pursuing, and obviously as well, because I'm a practitioner, there's interest, right? But like I think like also in my life, you know, like whether it's the therapy, whether it's the coaching, whether it's the psychedelics, whether it's doing really weird stuff like darkness retreats and long ass vipassanas, and like Tantra and BDSM, like all of that were for me different pieces of the puzzle to come into the man that I've always been, beyond the old operating system. And I think also what you're alluding to, and I think what I'm also trying to attempt to say here is, it takes more than 10 fucking sessions, you know? And I'm not trying to like as well be dismissive of someone who maybe does these 10 sessions and leaves. I think I'm so passionate about this because I don't want men to suffer. I don't want men to continue carrying a chip on the shoulder. And I've seen this as well regularly as well in my own practice, how you know, like individuals come for a container with me, and I always give a man my honest opinion and my honest perspective towards him. Hey, listen, I see the growth that you've gone on. And, you know, with 4 or 5 decades of conditioning, I feel like there's a little bit more here for you. This is not for me to attempt to like continue selling my services to you. It's more because I really want to support you in creating sustainable shifts. And some guys receive it and listen and then take it. And some guys just don't. And that's unfortunate, right? But that's the reality.
It is. And I wanted to speak to that because I believe one of the few life hacks in this world is to pick a mentor who has done what you really want to do. That's why working with you is a great idea. Working with me is a great idea. Because, you know, I spend years, I probably also spent about 100,000 euros. I know you spend a fortune as well.
100,000. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Good 100,000.
So the fact is that you can piggyback on our experience, all the pain that we worked out our ways through. And one thing I really want to make super, super clear is that I am so fucking proud of who I am today. I feel so strong, so connected, so loving. I have never been a better father. I've never had a more beautiful relationship. I've never been able to show up as such a great man as I am today because of the work. I've never felt so connected as I do today. So all the work that I've done for me was not only for me. It is the greatest gift that I've been able to give everybody that I care for. And it's just an amazing feeling. And I really want, if there's one message I want to get out there, is there is a huge, bright, white light at the end of the tunnel. The only thing you need is the courage to get started and the strength to keep on going when it gets hard. Because it gets hard, but if you stay with it, you will be rewarded, and everybody you love will be rewarded. So stop saying, I will die for them. Live for them. Go to that light. That is what they need from you. That's how you stop suffering and make it all the way to living.
That's a beautiful message. Thank you. Theo, thank you for being here today. Thank you for the depth, the vulnerability, the willingness to bare yourself, all your sides, all aspects of you, man. I trust that listeners will have received so much from this.
It's really been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Where can listeners find you? And as well, what would you like listeners to know about as it relates to your offerings?
So I work with men. I've created a program divided into 6 phases where we start with a physical foundation. We have the mental resilience, the emotional maturity, relational strength, sexual awareness, and financial freedom, because these 6 areas are basically where we are challenged more or less on a daily basis. So there are 40 lessons. There's a workbook. I even created an AI version of myself, because what I've done, previously is scalability.
Yep.
I can't scale my time, but I can scale my knowledge by sharing it in a different way than just working one-to-one.
Yep.
So that has been my way. I also work one-on-one with men, and I think it's the same. It's just about, when you need to find a coach, find somebody whose story you can relate to and whose personality you can relate to. Because if you having this talk, why it goes so easily is because we have a bond. There is something strong between us, and it makes things easy. There's trust, And you need to find a coach where you have that type of relationship. It's not only about, capabilities or competencies. It's really about, is there a connection or not a connection? So, yeah, I applaud all men who want to do their work, and I encourage them to find somebody to work with that they can relate to.
As always, I'll make sure as well to put everything in the show notes, and just as well encouragement to come your way. Brother, we'll have 2 minutes, but I wanna keep this brief. But I was really touched by your message that you'd shared around, don't die for your kids, like live for them. And again, I'm drawn towards so many men that I speak to and witness and see that just can't seem to pull the plug towards this type of work. Despite the suffering, despite them being able to see clearly what's here. And I could see that there might be fear, there might be helplessness, there might be the sense of like, I'm going to lose control, I'm going to fall apart if I allow this to happen. So as a final question, in a minute or two, what would you say to that man that might be at the brink of doing this, who has been entertaining this and is deeply afraid of stepping into that, but is at the same time inspired by the message that you had shared around living for them? What would you say to him so he can actually bring clarity towards what needs to happen?
I would ask him to imagine lying on his deathbed and asking everybody he loves who he was for them, to understand the legacy he's leaving. And then rewind the clock to understand what actions does he need to make today to make what they say become what he wants to hear, something that he would be proud of. I also think as a father, something that I really still feel strongly about, like, I have a daughter. The way I am a father to my daughter determines which type of partner she's going to choose. So if I'm not a good father, she will not choose a good partner. It is the best insurance I can possibly make for her to find the best possible partner, is to show her, tell her that she's amazing, how much I love her. And for my son to be present and be strong and show him what healthy masculinity looks like, so he can live in that masculinity as well, comfortably. That is one thing I will not allow myself to regret, to not be the father to those beautiful children that I want to be. I will never be able to forgive myself.
Thank you, my friend. Thanks again for coming on. Listeners, I hope you received a lot of value from this conversation with Rasmus and I. It's been such an honor to have this conversation with him. And if you really allow this conversation to permeate and to settle in, I really trust that there's a lot of wisdom here. And I really trust as well that there's a lot of perspectives that might provide clarity as it relates to your situation. So if you feel that another listener as well could receive benefit from this conversation, as always, I encourage you to pay it forward. And until next time, signing off.
Thank you for being here. If today's conversation resonated with you, my dear encouragement is to not leave it here. Take one thing from this episode and bring it into your life, into your relationships, into the way you lead yourself. And if you've been receiving value from the show, it would mean the world to me if you'd follow the podcast and leave a rating or a review wherever you're listening. It helps these conversations reach more men who are navigating the same challenges and asking the same questions. And until next time, I'm Alex Lehman.